愿意嫁给我吗？
我不愿意。
什么情况？有这观点吗？
你们拿出话筒和大家说话，让大家听听你们是态度。
我跟你说，我今天是做错什么了吗？我今天是做错什么了吗？我为什么要这样？我们现在结婚了。你到底是怎么样？我今天做错什么了，宝贝？我现在结婚，我们已经结婚了。
你对我的态度还是这样，你的脾气还是这样。
你是说我脾气很差是吗？
对啊，
结婚是不想结了是吗？
不结就不结呗。
随你便。
之后我不结。
强行的坐地起价，要求再加5万块钱的彩礼。
In Wuhan, Hubei, a young man experienced one of the most humiliating and heartbreaking days of his life. It was supposed to be the happiest day for him, yet unexpectedly, the bride suddenly raised the bride price on the wedding day, forcibly demanding an additional 50,000 yuan. Facing this last-minute demand, the young man firmly refused. He thought, even if he didn't agree to the extra money, as long as the ceremony was completed, the bride's family would have no choice but to accept it. Who would have thought that just because he didn't agree to add the extra 50,000 yuan, the bride actually refused to marry him right there at the wedding? This completely stunned the young man on the spot, like being doused with a bucket of cold water. In fact, his family wasn't financially well off to begin with. Originally, they only agreed to give 100,000 yuan as bride price, but the bride's family insisted on 150,000 yuan. For the sake of love, he gritted his teeth, borrowed from everywhere, scraped together the money, and finally managed to raise the full 150,000 yuan. But reality turned out to be even crueler than he imagined. On the day of the wedding, the bride's family suddenly raised the price again, demanding an additional 50,000 yuan on top of everything, which pushed him straight to the edge. After the bride backed out of the marriage at the wedding scene, only then did the young man realize, this wedding was probably not going to happen after all. Many people who saw what happened felt indignant for the young man. He had already handed over 150,000 yuan in bride price. Why should the bride's family still break off the marriage? Not to mention the banquet was already prepared, wedding photos had long been taken, and the 3 gold had been bought. All these things cost a fortune. Now the bride calls it off with just a few words. On what grounds? For an average family, that's not a small sum at all. It's only natural to feel heartbroken. Some others mocked him coldly from the sidelines. If your family can't even come up with 200,000 yuan for bride price, you shouldn't be thinking about getting married in the first place. But more reasonable voices argued, marriage should never be used as a bargaining chip for last-minute price hikes. Taking advantage of the other party's urgency to suddenly demand more money is absolutely wrong. A woman who does that, if she's really brought into the family, will likely make it impossible to have peace at home in the future. In fact, from a legal perspective, marriage and bride price are 2 different matters. No one has the right to be forced into marriage. And if the wedding falls through in the end, as long as there is proof of the bride price payment, it can be lawfully reclaimed.
结婚啦，结婚啦，今天结婚啦，黄昏的日子你从此结束啦，拿着红本本。
我的乖乖，这又是成捆的那，乘车的拉。
My goodness. The pressure of getting married in the countryside these days is truly suffocating. Just look at it. Bundles and bundles of cash have to be loaded into cars and hauled to the bride's family in multiple trips. The amount of bride price is so outrageous, it's like delivering gold bars. Honestly, I don't even know if a wedding is worth this kind of money anymore. You look at young people trying to get married these days, it's insane. Especially here in our countryside, where we rely on land to survive, where we depend on the weather for a living. Even if you don't farm at home and go out to work, how much can you really save? But now, getting married feels like stepping into a giant consumption trap. I can't even count how many times I've helped others calculate this. Definitely not just once or twice. Don't believe it? In our rural areas, raising a boy to adulthood, and just covering the cost of his marriage alone, takes at least 1.7 million yuan. If you don't believe it, let me break it down for you right now. Step 1, you've got to build a 3-story house in the village. That's the basic setup. Without 400,000 yuan, you simply can't build that kind of house. Step 2, you also have to buy a house in the county town. Over here, housing prices average around 5,000 yuan per square meter. A standard 120 square meter apartment will cost you 600,000 yuan, and that's without renovation. The house in the countryside and the one in the town both need to be decorated, right? Scraping the walls, tiling the floors, installing doors and windows. Just the most basic renovation will still cost around 200,000 yuan. Let's just go with that number. At this point, you've already spent roughly 1.2 million yuan. Next comes buying a car. These days, which family doesn't spend over 100,000 yuan on a car for a wedding? Let's just estimate 150,000 yuan. That brings the total to 1.35 million yuan. And now the most headache-inducing part, the bride price. Around here, 100,000 or 200,000 yuan is just the starting point. In many places, 180,000 yuan is the minimum to be considered acceptable. Some families even demand exactly 188,800 yuan, just for good luck. So now, the total cost has already approached 1.53 million yuan. But that's still not the end. What about wedding photos? What about hiring bands or performers? The banquet, cigarettes and liquor, gold jewelry, gold necklaces, gold bracelets, gold rings. Put all of these together and you'll need another 100,000 to 200,000 yuan. When you tally everything up, spending 1.7 million yuan on a countryside wedding is absolutely not an exaggeration. Now here comes the real question. How many rural families can actually afford 1.7 million yuan? Truth is, most families have to scrape together everything they have, borrowing from relatives and friends, exhausting all their savings just to marry off their son, and end up right back at square one financially. And what's even more disheartening is this. Even if you give it your all to help your son get married, if he's lucky enough to marry a thoughtful and capable daughter-in-law, that's fine. But if not, then it's big trouble. Before the parents even get a chance to rest, they're already expected to continue serving their new daughter-in-law. Guys, the pressure of getting married nowadays is just too much. Sometimes I truly don't understand. What are these families thinking, asking for hundreds of thousands in bride price at the drop of a hat?
以前想着怎么谈一个怎么找一个，现在不朝那方面想。
I used to think a lot about how to find a girlfriend, how to get into a relationship, as if that was one of the most important things in life. But now, I don't think about that at all. What I care more about is how to make more money to prepare for the future. People like us, what choice do we have? Look at me, I'm only 31, but I've already experienced far too much. You have to understand, these days a single son has to take care of both parents. That kind of pressure is something rich people can't even begin to understand. We live on hard-earned money. If we stop working, we don't eat. We can't rely on savings like some others. We've been struggling since we were young, and there's nothing we haven't been through, right? So now I've completely stopped thinking about relationships. All I want is to save as much money as I can, so that by the time I'm around 50, I'll have enough savings to exit the workforce early. By then I can enjoy life, eat what I want, play how I like, enjoy what I've earned. I don't gamble, I don't waste money, I don't mess around. I'm different from others. I've always believed one thing. The one who earns the money should be the one who gets to spend it. You see, after 50, a lot of people's health starts going downhill. At most, they can earn maybe 7,000 or 8,000 yuan a month. Working until 50 is about the limit. And if you don't have any savings by then, that's when real anxiety hits. But if you've been planning all along and you've saved up a lot by then, life becomes much easier. When I reach that point, and if I don't waste money, I'll have so much saved up I won't even be able to spend it all. In fact, this is exactly why so many people born in the 1990s don't get married. Look at us, so many are planning to stay single for life. I've got several classmates who are about the same age as me, and none of them are married either. It's not that we're not chasing girls, it's that we've all seen through it. Marriage isn't about building a life anymore. It's a trap. What's more, I can't even afford to get married now. The moment you bring up marriage, the girl's family opens their mouth and asks for tens of thousands of yuan in bride price. Just like that, 400,000 or 500,000 yuan. Where's that money supposed to come from? That's the life savings of your parents, scraped together over decades. And just look at today's divorce rates among people born in the 1990s, 70% to 80%. Many couples don't even make it 3 years. They separate before they even have kids. Tell me, can you really believe in that kind of marriage? Does it have any meaning? In the end, you hand over 400,000 or 500,000 yuan just for the bride price, and that's not even counting the cost of a house and a car. And then you end up with a failed relationship. Is it worth it? Our generation isn't cold-hearted, we've just woken up. It's not that we refuse to marry. It's that we refuse to be taken for fools.
Fairy girls, don't pretend you don't know. The real reason why you insist on demanding a high bride price when facing marriage isn't custom, or attitude, or even that your parents work hard to raise you. The truth is, there's only one reason: you're lazy and poor. At this point in your life, marriage might be your only chance to change your destiny. You can gain a large sum of wealth instantly without working hard for it. If you want a second chance, then your only option is to get divorced and remarried. This isn't hard to understand, because for someone who is lazy in action and poor in thought, no one would easily give up this chance to demand a bride price. If you're going to talk about customs, traditions, morality, frugality, and filial piety to your in-laws, you don't say a word. But when it comes to the bride price, you remember it better than anyone else. In today's society, when building a family, there really is no need for bride price anymore. If all you talk about is the bride price and you never mention what you're willing to give, then isn't that just shameless behavior? The reason you still want a bride price is because you're not satisfied with your current income. You're lazy and don't want to work, so deep down you've planted this idea of bride price in your heart. Even if you meet a guy with great financial conditions, you might hold back and pretend not to mention the bride price for now. But as long as you don't change your laziness and selfishness, one day you'll still be exposed. And what's waiting for you then, you know it well. Stop saying that men refuse to give you bride price just because they're poor or because they want something for nothing. In fact, even if you meet a wealthy man and you bring up the bride price and demand it in order to marry you, try it and see. See if he doesn't get annoyed. Yes, there are some guys with low income, weak ability, and laziness who can't afford bride price. But there's a fundamental difference between them and you. At least they don't shamelessly expect others to give them money. Resisting high bride price is just the beginning. A healthy model of marriage needs the joint efforts of our generation. So, what do you think about the issue of high bride price? You see it as a continuation of tradition or a heavy burden? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section. We'd love to talk with you. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.